why aren't you keeping this in stock? It's so dumb.
Right. And for those just tuning in, the generic product is all about adult toys.
It's why they're generic. I mean, it's the 21st century these days.
This would be the alternate version of the Dragon's Bane.
Indeed. Only in this instance, Dragon's Bane is not the land. It's an actual no. That's not what everybody's tuning in today about.
I mean, it could be. All right. So I had this thought. I can't remember who from. I want to say maybe it was a combination between Game Masters and my conversation from last time and Cybermind. But basically, I had the idea of wanting to talk about not policies, but politics in role-playing games. Like how how kingdoms, queendoms, republics, whatever, are set up in those games, and how it's very tropey, and you don't really see like a lot of variation. And I mean, you even go to Go and I covered the Eberron Core book, and even there, a lot of everyone's nations were set up in the traditional medieval style, rather than, say, something more Victorian era or industrial steampunk era or steam era. So that's kind of the topic of today. So voice some thoughts, peoples.
Well, so mine, I guess, traditionally I do fantasy role-playing, right? And as such, I really, in the term of politics, of course, the first thing that jumps to my mind is Democrats, Republicans, that kind of thing. And I don't think that that's ever been a categorized or a category of politics in my games. Mine have mostly always been good versus evil. You've got the good kings, you've got the evil kings, or you've got the good heroes, you've got the evil NPCs that want to take over the world. It's a very simplified form of politics, if you will. That's not to say that there's not political intrigue. Every now and again we'll have a king that has fallen from grace and wants to take over as much as he can. And of course, he's got his followers that are going to follow him. He's got opposing factions. So I guess in a strict sense, that is politics in my campaign world. But for the most part, I mean, I don't really have like a working political mechanic in my systems. I don't know. It's just something that I guess for me, politics is maddening, in our real world. It's just an insane. I've never understood people just supporting a party just because it's the party line. I've never understood that. And so I use role-playing games as the escape to get away from real world issues, and I just, like I said, generally don't include like the strict sense of the term politics in my systems, but
that's more getting it down to like the policies. But this is more like, okay, so what I'm getting at is like when you think of like a theocracy in conventional role-playing games, it's usually designed as like you've got the head leader who's also the religious figure, and then you've basically got this militant religious state that wants to crusade every moment that it gets. Rather, you look at the real world, and the Vatican isn't exactly calling for crusades every 5 years, kind of thing.
Well, so here a couple of things. Number one, like the big problem with trying to talk about different political systems is that then you're getting into macro level, situations, but when you're playing a role-playing game, you're very much dealing with the micro situation. You're dealing with, the vizier or the bureaucrat. Maybe you're dealing with the king, but you're dealing with it on a very one-to-one, personal level, as opposed to, hey, we're going to go and send our trade negotiation to this other country, and because they're organized this way, we have to do these kinds of things. And storytelling, I don't think, is as conducive in those environments. Whereas with which is what we're trying to do with a role-playing game.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it just kind of depends on, I mean, everything that I just said, I mean, I to what Seraphis, what you just said, and I'll kind of combine it with Brian, what you just said, regarding storyline versus, like the Seraphis, how did you just describe it? Not policies, but the politics. Like, so you've got the one king, you've got the militant, or the, not the king, the religious leader, and then you've got the militant wanting to do crusades and stuff. Yeah, I mean, that is actually stuff that I have included in my game to propel a story forward. Usually I'll let that gray morality, and I think morality should be a part, or at least a facet of it. I usually let the players be the ones that determine, the morality of the situation, because sometimes they throw me for a loop and are like, oh yeah, well, we're behind this religious leader, let's go on the crusade for him. When it's like clearly not what I thought they would do. So, yeah.
So, like, the whole reason why this kind of came about is, again, referring it back to Eberron, where you do have a lot of those macro situations involved. Thrain is very much a theocracy, for example. But again, it's described as being very religious zealotry in its fanaticism. It doesn't pose itself more like what, say, modern or even 19th century Rome became, where it still has the papal guard and everything, but it's more often takes its stance as a force to provide negotiations between warring factions.
Right.
And you kind of, I don't see that representation of a theocracy is what I'm kind of getting at.
And insofar as like part of the official settings, or in terms of when you sit down, what the DM has created?
More in official settings. Like, okay. You'll see like a lot of published settings, provide basically provide their monarchies as being absolute monarchies, rather than say a constitutional monarchy with a parliament, right, where the king is, right, or the queen is just a figurehead, that kind of thing. And not to bash on the US, but republics where like Athens is a great example of a republic in name only, and in every other circumstance, right, an empire.
Right.
I thought Athens was a democracy.
Oh, they can call themselves whatever they want, but you don't like.
No,
you know,
I'm just saying historically, I thought that was kind of like the quote unquote ideal democracy, or maybe not necessarily ideal, but like the stereotypical
the
democracy.
benchmark of a democracy.
Right. And then
It was a
'cause
democracy only as long as everybody followed what the Caesar dictated.
wasn't Caesar in Rome?
Yeah, that was
Yes,
Italian.
I'm thinking Rome. Sorry.
I was gonna say because Rome again is that that benchmark for republic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm getting my generation empires mixed up, aren't I?
Yep, a little bit.
Yeah. Whatever, you know what I'm going on about.
I think if you look back at some of the source material, and I'm trying to rack my brain, the only one that I can really think of that kind of detailed out politics, and I use that in a very loose term, was what was it? There was like Elminster's Guide to Forgotten Realms, but it was more like a atlas. I think it was Elminster's Atlas or something, and it kind of talked about how like different areas had politics and what those politics were, but it didn't go very deep into that. It was more, this area is ruled by a king, this area is ruled by the majority, or something to that effect. It's been a long time since I've read that book, but I kind of vaguely remember that was there, but I don't know. I haven't. I mean, obviously for 5th edition, you just don't see anything like that.
Well, and
which honestly kind of surprises me, but still.
Well, but here's another thing to consider in all of this. Like, why do we see stereotypical fantasies, kingdoms, etc.? It's because essentially that's what people want at the end of the day, quote unquote.
That's what they're familiar with.
Right. And I say that's what people want, meaning like, well, why do they play D&D and not Star Frontiers or, Rifts or whatever? They want stereotypical fantasy with kings and knights and dragons, etc. And I use that in a royal we kind of a sense.
Yeah. And on a slight topic, I mean, it's still the same topic, but it's a slight entertainment shift, I guess. Do you think that that's possibly one of the more reasons, or one of the bigger reasons that like Game of Thrones, both the novels and the TV show, became so popular, is because of the political intrigue that's in it?
I don't know, because I watched like a season of it and hated it. So
what was it about it that you didn't like?
Just that it's a bunch of horrible people being horrible to each other, and then like when a good person actually stands out, we're gonna kill that guy.
So isn't that like almost the very definition of what politics is?
Yeah, but I watch again going for the escape. I like rooting for the heroes. I like my black and white, white hat, black hat, root for the white hat, and I don't want to root for the absolutely horrible people. So anyways, that's just my
yeah. I mean, and the reason that I bring that or interject that specifically is because I certainly feel that Game of Thrones was very political, but it also gave a lot of people playing D&D specifically ideas on how to incorporate those kind of politics into their game. So see, that's where I'm bridging the two together to stay on topic there, Seraphis.
Yeah. No, I've got nothing to contribute to Game of Thrones. I didn't read or watch it, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I couldn't
even for the one of us that did.
I couldn't even do the audio book. Like that's the one time I've turned off an audiobook because the narrator was so bad. I'm just
wow.
like, nope, can't do it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I never heard the audiobook, and so
Anyways, but yeah, is that something that maybe people would have done? Been more interested in politics because of it? Because again, you're right. It does have a lot of that going on.
and I mean only in so much as they include that kind of element in their game.
Right. I think there's an argument to be made there. I don't know.
Yeah. Just an observation. So of all the other game systems, because I mean my main core reference, of course, is D&D. If I look at Dragonbane, if I look at Mortborg, if I look at Shadow Dark, some of the more recent games that have come out, I don't notice any political stuff in there. I mean, other than the basic good versus evil. And really the evil that's presented in all three of those is more the land itself, the situations that the players find themselves in. Not necessarily a kingdom or, a faction. But aside from that, like, step away from the typical fantasy. I mean, Brian, you've played more like mech games. And I don't know, superhero games. I mean, do you guys see any kind of like that type of politic in other genres of games?
Well, okay, so I mean, BattleTech is full of politics. Like the actual like core storyline is very much full of politics. But even then, it's still, is more of a feudal political system as opposed to,
Gotcha.
like what we would consider a modern political system. But that's because you're dealing like I think they make an interesting argument where a star empire where it takes weeks to months to cross particular areas of the realm, and
Yeah.
where communication may be faster but still isn't. Like actually that's one of the points that like so everybody kind of complains about Dark Age. It's like so
Okay.
because in the BattleTech timeline, because it took a lot of the cool things away. Well, I was actually talking with somebody at Catalyst, and he's like, yeah, but we'd kind of broken the system because if suddenly everybody can communicate and like the whole problem with BattleTech is, okay, my planet just got invaded and taken over. Okay, even if I manage to get a message off, maybe it's going to be 2 months before reinforcements get here.
Right.
Okay.
Even though they have faster than light travel, but messages still take months. Yeah.
Right. Well, the messages could go out quick, but the travel is slow.
Right.
Like you get to go 30 light years, and then you have to wait a week, and then you can go 30 light years, and you have to wait a week.
Gotcha.
So even if you
Gotcha.
got a message out that day, is it 2 months, 3 months, 4 months? Okay.
Right.
What have the invaders, done to secure their beachhead in that time
Right.
that you're traveling?
Right.
How many forces do they, anyway, blah, 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 blah. So, but if you actually read the fiction that accompanies it, typically it's, like I said, it's a feudal system, but then planets will have different organizations, but then there's always still some sort of, representative portion of,
Sure.
the populace, kind of like we have nowadays.
Well, and I like the topic that you brought up, Seraphis, of politics in games, because now that I think about it, I mean, even even playing Star Trek role-playing game, I guess I've never really considered that that's really the core of that game is politics. I mean,
Prime
at least when,
Directive, the
yeah,
the
yeah. I mean,
plans of the
at least,
United Federation of Planets. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, at least back when I played, course, when I played, we were playing like original series era. And on occasion, and I can't remember if it was called a game master or whatever, but the person running the game, um, we had a very strict no prime rule, meaning that we would never encounter, Captain Kirk or Spock or McCoy or any of the main characters like that.
Hmm.
Every now and again, he would interject like a communique or something that came from the Enterprise, and they wanted us to go check something out. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I guess it was Federation versus, Klingons versus
Romulans,
and
Gorn.
of course there were, and Gorn. I mean, there was no, Borg at that time didn't exist. Nothing from Next Generation existed when we were playing. So, but yeah, I mean, now that I sit back and think about it, I mean, yeah, politics did play a pretty big part in that game. I guess to a lesser extent, when we played Star Wars, that was kind of the same way too.
That
Of course,
was
I mean,
going
it
through.
was,
That was going through my head when Ger mentioned trade negotiations. I just had
yeah,
Star Wars, just the trade negotiations have
Yeah.
failed.
yeah, yeah,
Well, but again, I think that goes back to my point, is that in a role-playing game, especially like in a small party kind of a situation, maybe you are the trade delegation, whatnot. But again, you're going to deal with the corrupt person in government, and
sure.
I don't think you're as often trying to overthrow the kingdom, or conquer the enemy kingdom or whatnot.
Yeah, I
um
guess in my way, or in my mind, I just never really considered that or saw. Let me rephrase. I never saw any of that as politics. It
right.
just didn't cross my mind. But now you've really got me kind of looking at it in a completely different way.
Well, no, but I mean, but
So
you are right that a lot of it does come down to politics. I mean, like look at the Robin Hood story.
yeah,
So it's the evil sheriff, and the prince, taking all the money, blah blah blah. Okay, well, yeah, that is, there are political things involved. Okay, yes, you can go attack the sheriff, but okay, obviously he has got the militia of the
right.
realm behind him. So maybe you have to find a different way to eliminate him, as opposed to direct confrontation. um so yeah, I think there is a lot more elements of politics when you drill into it, but I think a lot of us just kind of avoid it, because like you said, we just rather have a nice escape and a nice little
Yeah.
fantasy story and whatnot.
Well, what about when you play something like Cyberpunk or Star Wars, or a more involved traveler campaign?
See, that's what's got my mind going back and replaying some of these old sessions that I played, because it's like I said, at that moment and up until this particular stream, associating the term politics to me equated to Republicans, Democrats,
Hmm.
And not the broader sense of the term. And so that's when I say that I've tried not to include politics in my games. That's more what I'm speaking to is,
Hmm.
the act of Republicans and versus Democrats,
Hmm.
not Klingons versus Federation versus, Romulans versus Vulcans versus, a Gorn versus blah, blah, blah. That is politics. You are 100% right. And that's what I'm saying is it just never clicked in my mind that that's what all that was. And so now it's got me really thinking like, shit, how political have my games really been?
Well, but I don't like that's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, all of this usually does boil down to political situations.
Yeah.
But when you're kind of broad stroking some of the macro elements, you can
Good
still
versus evil.
have
Yeah.
you can still have a good story, a good time where you're not getting into the political situations where people are going to be upset. Well, I don't like that you did this, or that I'm opposed to that, blah blah blah. You're avoiding that because again, you're dealing with the corrupt sheriff, or
Mhm.
the you know the high command that's you know um not giving all the information to the chancellor, and so they're being
Right.
able to prosecute this war. Um so I think there's a lot of ways to hand wave the unpleasant part of politics
Yeah,
from the
Well,
game.
like you said, broad stroke it. Yeah.
and that's the thing when I was saying about how it's not about the policies. That stuff, in my definition, is kind of policy stuff, not the politics stuff. Like, you look at, say, Cyberpunk, you don't need to know like what, the healthcare system in Night City is. You're looking at, oh, you've got this society, you've got this city that technically has a mayor, but let's be fair, the corporations run it.
Right.
So you've got this almost oligarchical situation in Night City going, but it's not about what the policies are. It's not about whether, does Biotechnica, do more to help Night City than Arasaka. It's not about that part. It's about what
Right.
impact they're having on the city, which, boils down. Like, I mean, you've been playing Cyberpunk 2077. The whole Johnny Silverhand bombing the Arasaka building.
That's straight up politics.
That's straight up politics, but what did it have in terms of repercussions? They just rebuilt the building.
Right.
They put a memorial, and by 2077, like barely 20 years later, it's just a thing.
Right. It happened.
Yeah. So like it's not about what the policies were. It's about like what was that political impact, and it was nothing. His actions ultimately did nothing.
Right. And I think that's where it's like, if you're going to bring politics into your game, you need to understand what are going to be the knock-on effects, or at least you're going to have a plan for what the knock-on effects are.
Yeah.
Like,
for example, like if you had a faction, a nation in your world that was more like, say, modern day Rome, where it was a theocracy that used its power to negotiate to stop wars more than, crusade to kill people. What would happen if that theocracy got overturned by someone who was less inclined to be a negotiator? And then you had, them provoking wars amongst all the other nations. Like, there's an aspect there to that, it's not what it's kind of the policy, but it like, how would that then affect that nation 20 years time, even if you did take out the leader?
well, and not necessarily even like 20 years time. Like, again, what's it going to have? What kind of an effect is it going to have on the game that we are playing? Like it even okay, so like we kill the king. Okay, now what? That's are you going to end the campaign because now you've killed the king? Or like is his son going to be coming after the party because, well, so they killed the king, the son's the heir, so, there are a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. But yeah, it's complicated. And at some point, we have to address Helios's question.
Yes, I was about to pop that up.
Yeah.
Even though it's, no matter what, we're going to derail some conversations here.
That's fine.
Well, so the first thing that pops into my mind, of course, is Wizards of the Coast and their injection of what would be termed as woke politics. Is there a difference between fantasy world factional politics and real world politics that a game creator brings into their system? And to answer that question straight up regarding WotC, no, I don't think there is a distinction, because they have brought real world politics into their fantasy system. Now, not in terms of mechanics, but in terms of material presented.
Yeah, and I think that's like okay, the simple answer is yes, there is a difference between fantasy world factional politics and real world politics. Of course there is a difference. We're dealing with fantasy versus reality. However, these fantasy world politics are based not just on our current world, but also on history. It's like we were talking about earlier. Okay, democracy, what do we think of? We think of Athens. Republics, what do we think of? We think of Rome. Regardless of what the modern situations are. We think of a monarchy. What do we think of? We think of King Arthur. Which technically that's a fantasy, a fantasy world politics. So, you can, but I think what you said, Brian, is really important. It's how is it presented? Are we taking a modern situation and using it to influence the game? That could be fun. That could be a lot. That could be interesting. Or are we using it to, tell the players, no, you're horrible people and you should buy our game, but not play it because you don't have the right genetic background.
Right.
Yes, I'm speaking of an actual game out there.
Yes, I know. And I love the knife twist into that. That derailed. I was going to say something. Nope. I had something I was going to add to what Game Master said, and it's gone. Shit. Anyway. Okay, so oh my god, brain is not working. Not that it usually works, but shit. No, it's I'm locking up on what I was gonna say to Game Masters. Shit.
All right. So then I will pose a question.
Please do,
to the group. I am also going to provide my answer, but I want to see if anyone has a different answer or a different suggestion. Would be, how do you integrate those, like the real world politics, into your game? Now, my personal answer would be actually know what you're talking about. Okay? At least on like a basic level. Okay? Like when, during political season, everybody likes to run around. It's like, oh, we live in a democracy. Okay, well, no, we don't. We live in a republic. Democracy, everybody gets to vote on everything that's happening. Well, there's 350 million people in the United States. That doesn't work. Okay. So we all elect one guy, and then that guy goes and quote unquote represents us. Does he? That's a different question. But that is a republic over a democracy. Everybody likes to yell about fascism. Well, you bring up the topic, and I actually catch something like literally within a half an hour, which I thought was hilarious, where fascism is essentially, it's still a socialist system, but the government goes to the private businesses and says, this is what you're going to do for us. So this is how you are allowed to operate as a business. So
that was too funny, by the way.
Yeah. like China, technically, like we all talk about communist China, but no, they have all of these private companies, but when they get big enough, then they have to have a, party member who then comes in and tells the business how they're going to operate, what kind of things they're going to do. Well, China's probably more along the fascist line as opposed to the communist line these days. But again, at the end of the day, the point I'm trying to get at is know what you are talking about and what you are wanting to do with this. Because yes, you have to come up with some macro level, for your game, so that then you can go in at the micro level and the party leader at the company. Okay, I have to go in and bribe him so that I can get access to the computer terminal or whatever. But understanding how those systems work. Anyways, there's my question/rant.
No, I agree. Because that's kind of what evolved from the thought process that I had on politics was that you frequently have people who will take. It's those LA riots I've been watching, right? Because we got them blasted all over our TV. Even though Ukraine's a little bit more important at the moment, but whatever, fuck it. Yeah, no worries. But they like to throw around words like fascist, but it often seems like a lot of people don't know what that means. Or socialist, and it's completely wrong in the context that they're talking about. Or it's communist, but it's like that. I mean, you're hitting on the broad definition of communism. It's like you got course 101 in communism and didn't expand on the rest.
Actually, I think it's worse than that. I think they're hitting on, the trope of communism, but having, but just using it as a pejorative. So, all right. Be right.
I think for me, and it's a shame that Gur's not here because I'm about to answer his question for him. I generally will shy away from real world politics. I kind of said this at the top.
Yeah.
At the top of the stream, because when he says, in order to do that, you kind of need to know what you're talking about. And I'll be the first to admit, I don't know anything about politics. Of course, my exposure to it is largely, as I've said, Republicans versus Democrats, versus Republicans. And I guess I'm more of, what you would call a centralist, if that makes sense. I have the ability to look at what Republicans are doing, and I have the ability to look at what Democrats are doing. And go, okay, well, you're just wanting to do this because that's your party line, but it doesn't make sense. But if we look at what this group of politics is wanting to do and what this group is wanting to do, they're actually the same thing here if you take this part and this part out, and they fit together perfectly and they'll work excellently. But they don't want to do that because that's what this one wants to do. So now all of a sudden this one has to directly oppose it. And in regards to that, because of that, I can't lean either way. You know, I can't go all in with a group that just I just and because of that, I can't include that kind of stuff in my game system. Second to that, what I will use, I guess, in terms of politics in my game system is look at pop culture and how politics are represented in that. That would be more along the lines of what my frame of reference is. Shows like Star Trek, or movies like Star Wars. You know, the various depictions and movies of King Arthur and Merlin and, you know, Game of Thrones, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And I guess that would be, as Gerd described, what I know is how it's represented from that perspective, not necessarily from a real world perspective, because the real world perspective, be honest with you, it confuses me. It's not I'm never going to understand how politics work because to me, there's no logic to it. And I am a very logic-minded person. When it's presented to me in the form of a show, movie, book, whatever, it makes sense and it makes logical sense because that's just how it's presented. That's how it is. There's not this prolonged exposure to it. Like, you know, I'm 52 years old and I've been exposed to our real world politics for 52 years. You know, obviously the first, 10 years or so, 12 years or so, I'm, completely oblivious to what it is. But so, I mean, really take a look at, the past 40 years, I've been really kind of exposed to it, trying to understand it, and I can't figure it out. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to talk about something, or let me rephrase, I'm not going to introduce an element into my game that I can't figure out. Yeah. So I think that's why, specifically regarding politics in my games, it's a one extreme or the other. It's a good versus evil, but there's always room for redemption. Again, I'll just take that direct from Star Wars. Yeah. You've got the very definition, and I'm referring to the original three episodes, yep. Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi. You've got evil represented by the Empire. You've got good represented by the Rebellion. You've got the epitome of evil, which is defined as Darth Vader and the Emperor. You've got the quintessential good, which is defined by Luke, Yoda, Obi-Wan. Well, in the course of it, those lines get grayer and grayer and grayer to the point where Luke convinces his dad to become good and overthrow evil. So, I mean, that's my definition of politics. That's something I can understand. And that's what I'll include in my game system. Yeah, as Helio says, centrist, true neutral.
I think also that kind of plays into the idea that, like, oh, okay, not really plays. I'll start again. Probably the reason why real world politics doesn't make any sense is because if you have someone, like, if you look at the micro scale of, like, a politician's, like, time in office, right? They will be lobbied at relentlessly, and either they will stay the course and reject, being
Right,
essentially
right.
legally bribed, or they'll take the money, they'll take whatever it is that they're being offered, and they'll start voting in ways that contradict how they should be behaving.
Hmm.
And I think that's one element that would probably be the biggest impact on why modern politics just doesn't make any sense. It's because, there's all this lobbying in politics.
Right. Well, and like I said, I mean, there's that kind of like what you just said. There is they're going to quote unquote toe the party line,
Mm.
and I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just that's a difficult concept for me to wrap my head around when. And of course, I mean, if somebody were to press me like, well, right now, give me an example, I could give you an example of any one specific policy that, is an example of towing the party line. Which is, again, this leads into why I shy away from politics and talking about it, because I specifically to what Brian was saying, I don't know enough about it to be able to talk competently about it.
And this is what I was saying about how, like, this I would consider like the policy talk, where it's not about like what the individual members, how they chaotically behave and how these odd results end up. It's about like, as I stated, why is it always a theocracy is a religious zealot crusader
Right.
organization? Why is the monarchy always a absolute monarchy? Why don't we really see like variations in like, oh yeah, we have a king who's our figurehead, but we have but it's a constitutional monarchy. We have a parliament, a council, whatever, House of Lords that oversees
Right.
like the actual governance of the land. And yeah, so it's like I'm not really aiming at, as I've said, like the modern version of political policies, but rather like that more broader spectrum, diverse.
Right.
Yeah. Like again, like we see like Cyberpunk, as mentioned before, Shadowrun. They all kind of play on that same idea that the government is basically a puppet for what the megacorps want.
Right.
And it's like, why is there no variation to that? Why isn't there a version of that that's like either like complete megacorp control, the government just doesn't exist anymore, why, whatever it may be, right? It's that kind of thing, really.
Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to think about like in my own system, or my own campaign, I should say. I mean, I guess really, and this is what I was talking about earlier. It's kind of expanded my mind into thinking about or considering, politics in a different light other than, good versus evil or Republicans versus Democrat, that type of thing. Because I have been running the same campaign world since the early 1990s. And there have been changes that happen over the years, obviously. Kingdoms have fallen. There has always been one constant, what I'd call a big bad evil guy. And that's my he started off as a sorcerer named Grain and eventually became a necromancer. Not he's currently on the cusp of godhood, but is not a full-on god currently, but he's more like a relentless, like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. You'll think you'll kill him, but he'll always come back. He's always got something out there that's going to allow him to come back. I know what it is, but regardless of that specific character, I mean, other kingdoms have fallen, others have risen up to take their place. But with how my campaign world works, I obviously don't have anybody that's currently playing in it that that started in it back in the 90s. So by contrast, someone that starts playing in it this August is not going to have any idea why certain things happen or why certain things are the way they are. But they are the way they are because specifically something that happened maybe 4 years ago or 7 years ago or 15 years ago. I know it because it's, my world's history. But to sit down and explain it to somebody, well, okay, so this kingdom actually expanded 4 times its original size because the group of players, when I first started this, took down the evil king, and that's how that particular campaign ended, is by 4 of them grouping together, and instead of having a monarchy, they decided to share the responsibilities among the 4 of them. And they became NPCs at that time because they retired. That was the end of that game. And so now, 20, 30 years later, those repercussions are still being felt, so that, like I said, they've expanded that kingdom 4 times, 4 times its size from what it was when it originally, was discovered back in the 90s. So in that respect, I mean, I guess, yes, politics does exist in my world. I just don't think of it in that term. This is just historical events at this point.
And I think it's, this is just me, but like, I've always enjoyed like that broader aspect of politics playing out in my games, because like, again, this might be because in Australia we're more political due to having, like, you have to vote in Australia. So
Sure.
We pay more attention to politics. We, like, at least when I went to school, we learned about like politics in like Europe. We learned about like a bit of political history in like Japan, obviously, because they tried to invade us. We're all good now, but it's a little bit,
Got a hairy there for a while, yeah.
Oh yeah. Although it's still funny that they did less damage to us than the hurricane that hit like a week later. World War II was fun in Australia. But yeah, it's always kind of played a part, like whether we were like playing a fantasy world or a game, sci-fi, cyberpunk. Like there was always an aspect of, I think maybe the thing that really kept coming up for us is like, we played in America in Shadowrun, right? We did Seattle, we did Chicago. But then we went to Australia once we got that book, the World Book. And after we like came to Australia, it was like, this doesn't feel like Australia. This feels like,
right. Is that the one that you were telling me that it feels like it's an American's like interpretation of what Australia should be?
I think in that regard, I was heavily referring to Rift's Palladium.
Yeah.
Definitely an American's idea of what Australia is like.
Right.
Shadowrun did it a little bit better because 2 of the main editors who wrote that Australian entry in the World Book were Aussies. But it had the glow that like an American editor kind of painted a brush over it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And it was like, it's close in this regard. That's cool. That's funny. I get that joke. Why'd you say shrimp? You call them prawns. What the fuck? Like,
Yeah.
why are you saying shit all the time? We say cunt or fuck. Like,
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, okay. Growing up, these are I'm going to rattle off. I mean, it's a little on topic, little off topic,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to rattle off what my exposure about Australia was.
Hmm.
It was Foster's commercial, Australian for beer. Okay. It was, that's not a knife. This is a knife. Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah.
But then we had the, oh gosh, what was it? It was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Down Under. It was a source book for Palladium.
Oh, okay.
There was the Men at Work music videos. Okay. And then Dingoes Ate My Baby. That was real big. And then, let's see, in more recent years, it was that New Zealand, Lord of the Rings, New Zealand was associated with Australia only by proximity. And that's really pretty much it. I mean, they're just not, well, Mad Max, you know, even though like it was, I guess, supposed to take place in America, but wasn't.
No, it was meant to take place here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's what I mean. Like, I mean, you know, it just, so again, I wonder if stuff like, you know, oh, we'll go throw some shrimp on the Barbie, you know, if stuff like that is derived all from, you know, the little bits of commercial, the Americanized commercials, the Americanized movies. There's another movie, Wolf Creek, you know, and I think that took the stereotypical view of the outback and, you know, kind of made it into a movie, which is a fucked up movie. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's a fucked up movie, but I enjoyed it, but still.
Yes. Elrond and Galadriel are Aussies.
Oh, and by the way, Galadriel is going to be, I guess, in the American offshoot of Squid Games. Or not the elf, but the actress.
Yeah, Kate Blanchett.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
She actually is in season 3 of Squid Games, by the way.
Yeah.
Small spoiler there.
I haven't watched Squid Games either.
Okay.
It doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah. So again, Squid Games, that's, you know, and according to all Americans now, that's what Korea is all like. You know, both North and South Korea.
What, not even
I'm kidding.
Train to Busan?
Yeah, that was an awesome movie. I loved it.
That fucking rocked.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
The second movie, not so much, but
No.
what was it? Peninsula. It was okay. I mean, I liked it because, you know, I mean, zombies, but still.
Have you seen a South Korean show called Kingdom?
Yes. Yeah.
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 That's
that's
fun.
pretty good.
Yeah.
My daughter is big into K-pop culture, and as such, she has sought out, like, she loves horror movies too.
Has she watched K-pop Demon Hunters?
Yes.
My daughter loves that.
Yeah. So she's, I mean, so she's gone out and she's found like, she loves horror movies just like me. And so she's gone out and found like all of the best Korean based, uh, horror movies and
Oh,
whatnot.
hold on. There's a movie I need to recommend to you. I need to find it. Keep going.
No, I mean, that's it.
I think it's called Zombie for Sale. Have you seen that one?
No.
I have to double check. I'm pretty sure it's Zombie for Sale.
The Odd Family Zombie for Sale?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. You need. You and your daughter will love that.
When the illegal human experiments of Korea's biggest pharmaceutical company goes wrong, one of their undead test subjects escapes. Okay.
That is the worst preview or synopsis
Okay.
for that movie.
Okay.
Okay, let me put it this way. You will never see more Korean fly kicks in a movie.
Gotcha.
Nor will you ever see a zombie DJ.
So talk about politics in that kind of genre, right?
Yep.
So the original Night of the Living Dead was one major political commentary.
Yep.
And that's something that didn't really occur to me probably until about 20 years ago. It's not something that I watch or look for. And my wife and I, it's kind of funny. We were talking about like, there's a show on Netflix right now called You. They just finished up their final season and final episode, and it's essentially just one large social commentary. And I was like, I really wish that they hadn't have been that overt with the social commentary. And she goes, "Are you kidding? The whole show was nothing but social commentary." And I'm like, really? And she starts pointing it out. I don't see that, So, I mean, I think that's part of what makes it so difficult for me to also include political elements in my games, is because, Gur, I kind of answered your question for you while you were bailing on us. But
I'm sorry.
But basically, in a nutshell, you had mentioned that, in order to include that kind of stuff or those elements in your game, you kind of need to know what you're talking about. And in a long, drawn out, waste of breath moment, I'll surmise it. That's probably the core reason that I don't include politics in my game, is because I don't know anything about it. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to that kind of stuff. But through the conversation that we've had today, I mean, I guess inadvertently I have been including politics in it, just in my own, I guess, interpretation and view of what that is.
Sure, and I think everybody does end up doing that anyways.
Yeah,
it's you can say whatever you think XYZ is, but at the end of the day, it's your interpretation of it.
Right.
That's kind of why I like that example of, well, we all talk about the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, well, turns out that they're more along this line as opposed to that line that we always talk about. So, and my whole point is more about, I think people just need, like, if you want to say this is what I'm including, know what it is that you're including.
Right.
Like, and that's the thing. Maybe you don't know anything about it. Maybe you decide, I'm going to read up on this. Oh, I think that's cool. I'm going to add this to my game. I think this makes a great good guy. It makes a good bad guy, whatever it is.
Eureka.
So, I think my bigger point is just, a lot of times we throw out those terms, just as pejoratives, to get the emotional response.
Right.
But if you want to use it in a game, you need more than the surface level. Not much more, but a little bit more.
Yeah.
Got it. Now I just shut everything down by coming back.
But that's what you do.
You know.
So then I will throw out another question.
And then leave us. Yep.
No, I am next in queue, but that's a different story. What would you say are what do you think the downsides are to including more overt political situations in a game? And I'm not talking about bringing your personal political opinions into it. We're assuming you're not doing that already. I'm talking about just putting any sort of a political situation into the game. Does that make sense?
The players.
I think it's a half-baked question.
I mean, I can answer it from both a player perspective and a DM perspective.
Okay.
So I think from a DM perspective, I will likely me personally, I would shy away from it only because, as I mentioned earlier, I just don't know enough about that kind of stuff to go super deep into it. My exposure, and I said this to Seraphis earlier, my exposure is really how pop culture presents it. So it's a very superficial version of politics. Now, as a player, me personally, I don't think that I would want to play in a game that's like that, only because if it's disguised as, this is just an event that's happening in the game. Okay, that's one thing. But if it's overtly placed in there, I'm likely to shy away from it just because, as we talked about earlier, I want to play to escape the real world issues. I don't need to play through a scenario where the town's guards are running through the streets and gathering up elves to kick them out of the kingdom. Because they're there illegally or whatever. I don't need to do that. I mean, that's, we see that happening in the real world. And I want to play a game where I'm out, hunting dragons or diving deep into caverns and looting magic items and searching for traps. That's what I want to do. So, I guess that's kind of my answer there.
I feel like the biggest, taking it just, face value, I think the biggest problem would be with potentially a new group of players is that even if you explain it to them, they're going to bring in their own personal interpretation of politics and policies of those politics. If you're more conventionally playing with, friends like I do, who I've known for 20 odd fucking years, we all know when I'm bringing up things that are pseudo Australian political. It's not that I'm going to be Liberal bad, Labour good, Greens better, or shit like that. It's going to be presenting, for example, as I snarkily said before, a reskinned version of, say, the Eureka incident, and kind of disguise it as, hey, these peasants are being mistreated by the crown that you've come across. Are you going to help the crown because this is technically their land, or are you going to side with the peasants who are already fortifying their position? And hey, they've just told you they've got more peasant workers from the docks that's 3 days away who are coming in, and you've got all these burly dock workers who are yeah, we're going to help you guys. Who do you side with? And yeah, that's kind of Eureka. Or I mean, even a Ned Kelly situation is very much just Robin Hood, and that's also hilarious. Of course, Robin Hood. If it started off with more along the lines of Robin Hood Men in Tights, where like the Crown's literally taking away like his land and everything, and he's just like, "But I just got back. What the? Now I'm being fined now because I didn't pay my bills because I was. Are you fucking okay? Fuck it. I'm an outlaw now. Like, that kind of stuff. Although, quite honestly, most of my players from high school just went the Ned Kelly route regardless. It's a very typical style of background for our adventurers. Bye.
I'll be back.
Yes. Helios knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Of course he does. He's Aussie. And
Yep.
Eureka's in Queensland, I think, too. So it's more up his way. I moved away down south. But yeah, so yeah, it's like in that regard, I feel like the biggest problem would be like new players bringing, even if you like explain, hey, this isn't modern day politics. This is like, how World War One started with, the assassination of Prince Ferdinand stopping in at a bakery.
How many games have you played in where that's even been necessary to bring an explanation of politics up, like specific to the game you're playing?
Pretty much all our Shadowrun and BattleTech games.
Wow. Okay.
D&D not so much, mainly because we just kind of played it as
Yeah.
But I mean, ours kind of played more onto the constitutional monarchy stuff that we knew because we wanted more of like we wanted more of the Guy Fawkes thing.
Gotcha.
But that's because we're Australian. But yeah, it just it's an odd one.
Yeah.
But yeah, mainly because like I mean, again, like as we were saying last week or a week before, my games have most of the time with people either I already know or who are longtime associates of those people that I know.
Right.
So it's not really
well, and I think that might be a under the surface third reason that I don't introduce that kind of stuff in, because my player base, I mean, it changes, from semester to semester. So without sounding like Watsy, my aim is to not offend anybody. Okay. And so by nature of that, I know that politics, especially in America, can become a very hot topic real quick. And the easiest way to avoid that becoming a hot topic is for me to avoid the topic. So I purposely don't include the city guard running through trying to gather up elves and kick them out, because that hits too close to home. And I'm just going to avoid that topic. So, any other real world politics that's taking place will get completely avoided. I'm not going to have a group of NPCs decide that they're going to go plant bombs at, the Waterdeep dock district. That's too close to World War II. Too close to those kind of events happening. So I'm just not going to include that kind of thing in it. then that's a rabbit hole I just don't want to go down. I want to. I don't need to pull from real world history because I've got so much messed up stuff in my own head that I can create my own world's own history. So
also just
no, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, although I do find it fascinating that one of the ways that Japan coped with the two bombs that were dropped was to create Godzilla.
Yeah.
I always thought that was just a really interesting interpretation. And I don't know. I'm big on pop culture.
Godzilla and KFC for Christmas.
KFC for Christmas. Oh, right. Yeah. I don't understand that one, but yeah.
I don't either, but I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's funny that one of the fantasy games that I actually love quite a bit, Dragon Age, its first entry and kind of its second entry, although the second entry kind of wasn't as good as a game as the first one, but Dragon Age Origins really provided an interesting way at showcasing a political system and the treatment of things, and ironically did it before, because you said about like rounding up elves and deporting them. One of the big things about Dragon Age is that city elves live in an alienage where they are allowed to leave sometimes if they are working for a human, shall we say. And I think that that's kind of a funny thing that, and you've got the Chantry again in Dragon Age. You've got the Chantry that goes around hunting the Dalish elves, the wild elves that are still out in the forests. Except when you look at the Chantry as a whole, the Chantry is kind of split between two ideologies. One of them is like, we launched a crusade against the elves, we need to finish it. And the other ones are like, we've kind of ruined their entire civilization. Can we stop? And maybe can we like release the elves in the city alienages, so that they can, have, let's not call it freedom, let's have basic rights.
Well, and that's kind of what when the Drow were introduced. I mean, that's kind of, and the Underdark. I mean, that I kind of really always interpreted that as a very political inclusion into Forgotten Realms. And I hated it. So much to the point where I really never included that in any of my games that we ran. I mean, it really wasn't until kind of recently that I really started trying to explore the Underdark. In fact, it was when the D&D movie came out last year, the year before, whenever it was, 2 years ago, 3 years, whatever, that I really kind of started researching, the Underdark and what all, it was really about. And because, I mean, even when it came back out, back in AD&D days, I was like, God, yeah, I mean, that's really political stuff. I just don't care enough about it.
And just to chuck to Helios again here, it's ironic that the first Dragon Age did a really good job inserting politics, and the last one destroyed the franchise by inserting politics.
Yeah.
Well, but again, it goes back to, are you trying to create a political situation in the game, or are you trying to preach about your own political opinions in the game?
Right, which goes back to what Helios was asking, originally. So yeah, I mean, I think that in some cases, I don't like this topic. It's making me really look at stuff in a different way, and I don't like that. It makes me uncomfortable.
He has ruined my stereotypical fantasy and simulation.
Yeah, I don't like it. Well, I mean, because what we were just talking about, the Underdark, that was I mean, I feel that was politically motivated.
Yeah, but the concept comes from like the Hollow Earth idea, which is again another really cool thing to insert into D&D.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could literally have your Underdark be like the Hollow Earth, and everything there, instead of being drow, is like dinosaurs and stuff, and that's why your world has dinosaurs.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially what Eberron did. We're putting dinosaurs.
So now you're going to tell me that Eberron is all political. That's what you've been saying the whole show. I know.
No. That's what we said for 4 months while we were reading that book.
I know. I'm being facetious. Oh, Birthright? I mean, that Birthright was political? Come on now. Shit. Wait,
No.
Warcraft was political? Crap. Damn it. Now I got to stop playing role-playing games altogether. Wait, you mean I'm being political now because I'm voicing that I hate politics in games? Shit.
Inception.
Now I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to operate.
Wait, Ninjas and Super Spies involves politics?
Yeah.
I just want to dress in black and throw kunai at people.
Like everyone else.
Exactly. By the way, Brian.
Yes.
Why, Brian? When Ninjas and Spy Game?
When I stop feeling like a loser, I don't know.
Okay, we'll
never.
We'll let you explore your brainy face first, then.
Actually, first off, I am having a lot of fun. Just
as am I.
For the record. Brian, have you been watching the other episodes of My Little Pony?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't seen your comments, and so I was just curious.
No, I'm having to catch up on it after the live, because
that's fine. I just knew you were excited about it, and then after the first day, I didn't see you, so I was a little sad.
Yeah.
Anyways, but we have come up with an idea for a side quest episode.
I don't think I've seen. Okay.
Okay, so side quest episodes. Seraphis and I did this. Like, there was like one day, it's like something was off, and it's like, okay, we're just gonna do a side quest. So we're not gonna like work on the book. We're gonna, it'll be a related topic, but we'll have a little bit more fun with it. We did it like with the movies that inspired Eberron and a couple of other, like one or two other things. Anyways, so My Little Pony. What is the problem that everyone seems to have with My Little Pony?
Not enough Ghost Rider pony.
I don't know what.
It's an easy answer. You're just avoiding it.
It's made for kids.
It's made for girls.
Okay.
I mean, the role-playing game is not, but I'm just saying the brand. It is a girl brand. Yeah. Like the number of people in our circles, when I mention My Little Pony, everybody's like, nope.
Right.
Not even going to look at it, because we're all a bunch of 40, 50 something year old guys.
Okay.
True.
And as I've been so I've already read the G.I. Joe book. Okay. And now going through My Little Pony and seeing how they're using it and the way that it's written, you know, I still think that the system is solid. It's a nice, simple, easy enough system. Okay, Helios, bronies aren't people. Okay.
He's just saying that because he doesn't want to admit he's a brony.
Maybe.
Embrace the brony.
No, I will not. So that's the thing. So I do think it is a good system. I think that at least the way that it's being presented.
Wait. Was that the hand signal?
What? The embrace the bro? I don't know. That was
No. Seraphis has a specific hand signal he's supposed to give me. What that? Okay, that wasn't it.
Okay.
When he really wants his channel taken down, he's got a specific hand signal to give me, and it's my sole duty, responsibility to ensure that his channel gets taken down.
Got it.
But I don't think that was it.
Oh crap! Anyways, so I was talking with a friend of mine, and I'm like, I really, number one, I'm having fun doing it with Kim. I actually really like the way she reads.
Yeah.
So that's been fun, being able to talk about it, and all like everything else that comes along with it. I've had a lot of fun with it. But so I started thinking about, like, I was explaining that to a friend of mine, and I'm like, and it's a good system, but I don't care what 10-year-old boy you show this to. It doesn't matter that the game says, oh, you can be a boy pony or you can be a girl pony. Okay, that 10-year-old boy is not going to care. Okay, he's like, I'm not. I got a Tonka truck. I got a Tonka truck over there. You kids have fun. I'm gonna play with the Tonka truck. Okay, so I started thinking about it, and I'm like, why not just, or like, how could you reskin the game? For all intents and purposes, you don't change anything. You're literally just reskinning it. And so we're going to do a side quest episode about how to reskin My Little Pony for boys. So,
just My Little Pony, but goth.
No, but it's like rewording most of the quote unquote important stuff so that it sounds like something a boy would want to do. Like the aspects of harmony, which essentially are the classes. It's like the spirit of kindness and the spirit of laughter. Like I actually took it to Grok, and I'm like, okay, rewrite these a bit more masculine. And and it like literally was like, and that's totally awesome, and you should do this thing, and so it sounded, again, it's something that a 10-year-old boy would latch onto. So
from the 90s, maybe.
What I mean, I'm trying to not spoil everything.
So I mean, just go Transformers
or G.I. Joe. It's still the Essence 20 system.
But they have their, like, number one, My Little Pony, like, from I haven't exactly figured out where, but My Little Pony is supposed to be what?
GoBots.
No. Well, My Little Pony is supposed to actually be a little bit more streamlined for kids.
Yeah.
So
that's why I say and that's why I say GoBots, because I've always interpreted, okay, you've got Transformers, and then you had kind of a knockoff of other machines called GoBots. They weren't as detailed or as intricate in their transformation. So I mean, it was more like this is a GoBot. Fold it once. Now it's a car. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas Transformers was like 15 different movements to make it from robot to car. So I mean, you could easily do GoBots. It's just sure. I could see it be reskinning to that.
And I think you could, but again, wait for the side quest episode. Okay. I think you'll like it. I actually have I've actually commissioned my almost second daughter-in-law. I say almost because apparently that's like years down the road, but they've been together since sophomore year, whatever. But she's actually going to school for animation and stuff. And so I actually have commissioned art for it. So, because like they've got like the ponies, the unicorns, and the Pegasus. And so it's like, okay, no, we need the boy versions of this, that are not ponies. Again, I'm not spoiling.
Yeah. I get it.
But
hey, if
anyways.
Weird Al can be if Weird Al can be a brony, then fucking any boy should be a brony.
No, and I get that, and that's in the rules, and I understand it. But at
see,
the
that's
end,
too political for him, so he has to shy away from it.
No, like it's actually funny. Like I'm actually hesitant to take it to like the people on like the Renegade Discord, because everybody's just gonna be like, well, they can just play My Little Pony, but play boy ponies, and it's like you're not.
You're missing the point. Yeah, no,
Right.
I get it.
So, but it is regardless. I think it's gonna be fun. I'm trying to come up with a second set of animals, but for right now, I'm stuck on the first one, because I don't see enough. Like we've talked about it at length, and we can't come up with one that would be good. What?
Griffins.
There
Smurfs.
are chimeras. Sphinxes.
Gnomes.
So sphinxes have a problem because they have wings. And
Pegasi have wings.
I know, but okay, so then here's the problem that I'm having is because like dinosaurs was one that somebody suggested.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I have the problem of, okay, I have to now deal with the difference between a little tiny raptor and a T-Rex. And the fact that the T-Rex has like a mouth full of teeth. Okay, so when the kid is going to want to attack stuff with, his big mouth full of teeth, now I have to have rules for that.
Then stick to the medium-sized herbivores.
Dragons.
So, well, all dragons can fly. Also, all dragons have horns. So then that runs into a problem. And I am also trying to keep it to quote unquote real animals.
Turtles.
Yes. Thought about that one.
Pigs.
Pig. Okay.
When pigs fly.
Yeah, pig.
I mean, I'm just saying based off the saying when pigs fly. So I mean, you could have like I don't know, you could have a flying pig. Why not? I mean, if you can have a flying horse, I mean, why not have a flying pig?
Right. No, I just mean it like the base animal I'm trying to keep to a real world thing. Because that's like the animal that we've picked, like I'm having it drawn as an animal or as the animal, and then the animal with a horn, and then an animal with wings.
Rhinoceros. Miniature goats.
They already have horns. Anyway,
then you'd have everybody just going around going.
Also that. Actually,
which I mean,
the funny thing is, I was actually trying to stay away from other farm animals because to me, a horse is a farm animal.
I follow you.
And like, because somebody said, "Well, cows." I'm like, cows are also farm animals. Anyways,
I mean, dogs. That's puppies or something. And I'm trying to think of like a little animal that would be appealing to, primarily boys.
Right. Dogs.
Yeah, dogs.
Possibly cats, although cats in my head are more girls than boys.
Also bastards.
Yeah, also like little furry jerks.
Assholes.
Oh, and also Helios, the My Little Pony Care Bear crossover won't happen because Care Bear is actually owned, I think, by Hallmark.
Yeah.
Or American Greetings. One of the two. And My Little Pony is Hasbro.
And you wouldn't want to have cats in there because then that would be too close to saying my little.
Oh, and it's also not going to be my little, whatever. Because again, trying to, put a different spin on it.
My little Katutu.
A what? Are you talking about some mythical creature from Australia?
No, my little Katutu, as in Cthulhu.
Oh, got it.
There you go. Have everybody running around as Cthulhu. Cthulhu monsters. Mythos. Cthulhu for kids. Now that would be fun.
Kids' first cosmic horror.
Raising cultists for fun and profit.
Dogs would be the only thing I could think of. Unless you went with like...
Yeah, spoiler alert, it's dogs.
or some kind of like insect, like spiders or houseflies, or I don't know.
Yeah, we've kind of like every...
Maggots.
The daughter-in-law was suggesting spiders because she's like, oh, spiders would be cool. I'm like, no, that's because you're a bug weirdo. Like literally, like my son has like bought her like the display is literally like this big, and it's just like a rhinoceros beetle like preserved and mounted. And it's like, why?
Goth says possum, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti, Yowie. Helios also says Yowies.
I don't know what Yowies are.
Go to Walmart, look in the candy aisle, right there at the checkout lane. They're little plastic like animal things, but it's covered in chocolate. So you crack it open and it's got like this almost like a plastic egg inside, and you open it up and there's a little plastic animal inside that.
Okay, Seraphis, I'm very disappointed in you. I just did a Google search for Yowie.
It's Australian, I know.
Yeah, and you didn't speak up.
Yeah,
basically it's Australian Bigfoot.
Yeah. Kind of like the bunyip, but yeah.
Well, see, I know it as the American candy.
I know it as the yucky candy.
We always thought it was decent chocolate, but we didn't buy it for the chocolate. We bought it for the little toys inside.
Yeah,
I have a huge collection of them. I've probably spent more than $300-$400 on that stuff. I'm sad. I'm pathetic.
No. I'm in the room. You can't be.
Well, to be fair, I have used some of these as miniatures in my D&D games.
That's okay. The creators of D&D probably did as well.
In fact, my bathroom has got probably 30 different Yowies that have all been... so I've got a nautical theme going on in my bathroom. We've got it painted a light blue, for the sky, some clouds painted up on the ceiling. We've got fishing net on the wall, and in that fishing net is trapped, these like a little miniature dolphin, a couple of sharks, hammerhead sharks, great white sharks, nursing sharks, and other tropical fish, all from Yowie. Yeah, because I'm sad. I'm pathetic.
Again, Gert's here. You can't be.
Exactly.
Yeah, well.
Oh, dear. Oh, well, this has been a very enjoyable discussion. Unless there's anything else anyone wants to say?
No.
Tune into Gaming with ADHD on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time.
That's Thursday
for more My Little Pony.
Thursday morning for Australia.
Whenever it is for Australia.
The future. The future is now. It is. It's Monday for me now, so.
That's true. The sun... the sun's been up for a couple of hours, but... Anyways.
Yeah. has.
Oh, dear.
But it has been fun. I'm sorry I had to dip out a couple of times.
For working, whatever that is.
Me and my addiction to overtime.
Corporate greed? I don't know.
I mean, I'm not a corporation, but I am a little greedy. Anyway,
Would you prefer wage slave?
I mean,
That's me.
that is.
It doesn't matter how much I work; I make the same amount of money.
That's
See, I'm not in management, so I don't. Anyways, whatever. End the stream.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. I've been Seraphis. I've been joined by Brian and Brian. One of them's a Y and one of them's an I. And I didn't say cunt. So there you go.